In 1882, New Mexico, the city marshal and his officers traveled on horseback through town. The marshal soon confronted a rancher named Randall, demanding he surrender 2 of his employees wanted for killing. Randall, however, rejected the request. When the marshal commanded his officers to make the arrests, Randall responded instantly, pulling his weapon and shooting the marshal and his men dead on the spot. Far from this violence, 2 experienced partners, Virgil Cole and Everett Hitch, journeyed across the Western Territories. The duo operated as hired peacekeepers, restoring stability to communities consumed by disorder. Virgil, an accomplished and fearless shooter, had earned recognition for his composed accuracy in threatening circumstances. Everett, a former West Point graduate, had previously served in military duty. The 2 men formed their bond years prior after Everett supported Virgil during a fatal shootout. Since that moment, they had stayed united, moving from one troubled community to another, providing their firearms and principles of fairness to those requiring it most. Their following assignment brought Virgil Cole and Everett Hitch to the small community of Appaloosa. Upon arrival, they met with community officials who explained their town had fallen under the dominance of a wealthy landowner named Randall Bragg. Randall and his crew had seized control of the region, frightening the townspeople and acting however they desired without concern for consequences. The officials informed them that the town's sheriff and 2 officers had previously attempted arresting 2 of Randall's workers for killing, but Randall personally intervened and shot all 3 peacekeepers dead. Since then, nobody in the community had dared oppose him. The community officials begged Virgil and Everett to accept the assignment and restore legal authority. Virgil consented, but only under one requirement. The community officials had to accept the regulations he established and respect his control without questioning. The officials hesitated, contending this meant they would be surrendering authority of the community. While they continued deliberating, a woman named Tilda entered and announced that a drinking establishment was being attacked by Randall's crew. With circumstances deteriorating, the community officials had no alternative and finally accepted Virgil's conditions, approving his written contract. Virgil and Everett immediately traveled to the drinking establishment, where they discovered Randall's crew intoxicated and creating chaos. The 2 peacekeepers confronted them, cautioning that they either cease their behavior or face imprisonment. The criminals refused listening and stated they did not acknowledge Virgil as the new city marshal. Virgil provided them a final caution that if they reached for their firearms, he would fire. When they disregarded him, both Virgil and Everett pulled their weapons and shot, eliminating them instantly. The following day, Randall Bragg rode into the community with his complete gang. One community official observed them approaching and rushed to alert Virgil and Everett at the drinking establishment. Shortly after, Randall and his crew entered and presented themselves. Virgil informed him directly that he was now the city marshal and that he suspected Randall participated in the killing of the previous marshal. Randall attempted talking around the matter, but Virgil refused negotiating, stating his crew would either respect the new regulations or end up imprisoned or deceased. The encounter concluded in silence, and before departing, Virgil clarified that from that moment forward, no individual was permitted to carry a firearm within the community boundaries. Shortly after, a woman named Allison French arrived in Appaloosa. Everett was first to observe her when she departed the train, conducting herself with quiet assurance. Curious, he trailed her at a distance until she entered a restaurant where Virgil happened to be dining. Allison courteously inquired if they could suggest a clean but affordable lodging in the community. Virgil informed her she could remain at the same lodging where he and Everett were residing, assuring her it was comfortable and secure. He then requested Everett assist her getting settled. When Everett returned later, he informed Virgil that Allison had been inquiring about him. This immediately captured Virgil's interest, and he began questioning Everett about their conversation. Everett stated she had inquired if Virgil was married, and he had responded that he didn't know. Virgil became irritated at the response, but Everett calmly reminded him that Allison would probably inquire herself, so he might as well have his own response prepared. Everett also mentioned she preferred being called live. Virgil then acknowledged he was interested in her. Both men found her appealing, but Everett, observing how genuine Virgil's interest was, quietly withdrew and decided not pursuing her. Later, Virgil and Everett noticed several riders observing the community from a hill nearby. Sensing difficulty, they decided investigating. When they reached the ridge, the atmosphere grew tense. The riders claimed that Virgil's control didn't extend to that location, and that they weren't violating any regulations. Virgil remained firm, informing them that Appaloosa and the surrounding territory were now under his authority. To clarify his point, he struck one of the riders across the face with his weapon, delivering a caution that Bragg's influence no longer controlled the community. Wanting to assist Ally settling in, Virgil arranged for her to labor at the local lodging where she could perform piano in exchange for her accommodation. That evening, she performed beautifully while Virgil and Everett sat nearby, quietly discussing Bragg and his crew over beverages. When she finished performing, Ally joined them at their table and initiated conversation. She questioned Virgil about his occupation, suggesting their assignment required them to eliminate for a living. Virgil corrected her, explaining they were peacekeepers who only eliminated when necessary to enforce fairness. After a pause, she inquired if he had any woman in his existence. Virgil responded that he had previously, but not anymore. Later, a man insulted the bartender before Ally, and Virgil responded without hesitation. He struck the man and continued attacking him until Everett intervened and pulled him away. Virgil departed the drinking establishment in anger. The following day, one community official approached Everett, questioning why Virgil was attacking people in the community. Everett calmly explained that Virgil always had his reasons and was not the type of individual to display regret for his behavior. He informed the official that if the community wanted Virgil's protection, they had to accept both his capabilities and his imperfections. Later, when Everett returned to their office, he observed Virgil and Ally embracing through the window from a distance. Some duration passed. During breakfast at the lodging, Virgil joined Everett in an unusually cheerful mood, suggesting that his relationship with Ally had grown closer. Moments later, Ally joined them at the table. She happily informed Everett that she and Virgil were planning purchasing a residence in the community so they could live together. Everett was caught unprepared by the news, but congratulated them politely. Their breakfast was interrupted when a young ranch worker named Joe Whitfield arrived, stating he had witnessed Randall Bragg eliminate the sheriff and the officers. Virgil and Everett questioned him carefully, ensuring he was willing to testify against Bragg in court. Once they were certain, they prepared arresting Bragg. They rode to Bragg's property and discovered him outside using an outdoor facility. Virgil and Everett held him at gunpoint and placed him under arrest. One of Bragg's crew observed this and discharged his weapon into the air to alert the others. When the remainder of Bragg's crew arrived, they discovered Virgil and Everett already holding their leader at gunpoint. Bragg commanded his crew to lower their weapons and permit the peacekeepers to take him away. As they escorted him back through the community, Bragg's crew observed but did not interfere, obeying his instruction. When Bragg observed Joe waiting for them and realized he was the one who had betrayed him, he glared at him and vowed that he would eliminate him, leaving Joe terrified. Virgil reassured Joe that he would protect him as long as he consented to testify. While Bragg remained imprisoned, Virgil spent his days constructing the residence he promised Ally. However, she began complaining that he was providing too much duration to his responsibilities as marshal and insufficient attention to her or the residents. Frustrated, Virgil sent Everett to check on her. When Everett arrived, Ally welcomed him warmly and displayed the place around. As they conversed, she began flirting with him, expressing her frustration about Virgil's lack of attention. She inquired if Everett thought she was attractive. When he stated yes, she suddenly embraced him. Everett briefly responded before pulling away, reminding her that she was with Virgil, not him. She responded that Virgil wasn't there, but Everett firmly informed her that both of them were on Virgil's side, and what she was doing was incorrect. Embarrassed and wounded by his rejection, Ally requested him to depart the residence. As Everett departed, he noticed several of Bragg's crew riding toward the city marshal's office. Realizing something was about to occur, he hurried there and joined Virgil. Standing firmly by his side, one of the crew announced they had come to take Bragg. Virgil commanded Everett to go inside and hold Bragg at gunpoint, cautioning him to be prepared in case he was shot. Facing the crew outside, Virgil remained his ground and informed them he was not afraid to perish. He cautioned that if they chose to battle, many of them would perish before the day was over. His calm assurance and steady aim were sufficient to make them reconsider. After a tense pause, the crew obeyed his instruction and rode away. Ally, who had been observing everything from a distance, came running as soon as the crew departed. Everett kept what had occurred earlier with Ally to himself, not wanting to cause difficulty. Later, however, he confided in a local prostitute, explaining the circumstance. She cautioned him that Ally would likely twist the story someday and turn Virgil against him. Not long after, two peacekeepers arrived in Appaloosa with a judge. They offered to assist guarding Bragg until the trial, and Virgil accepted their assistance. With Joe Whitfield prepared to testify as a witness, everything seemed ready. Soon after, a pair of well-known hired shooters, the Shelton brothers, rode into the community. They were dangerous individuals who accepted any assignment, whether legal or criminal. Virgil recognized them immediately but stayed composed. He clarified to them that he was the authority in Appaloosa and would not tolerate any difficulty. The brothers, knowing his reputation as well, kept their distance and observed quietly. As things appeared to settle down, Virgil took Ally on a calm carriage ride outside the community for a small outdoor meal. When the day of Bragg's trial arrived, Joe Whitfield provided a detailed account of what he had observed, describing how Bragg eliminated the sheriff and the officers. Bragg grew angry and attempted defending himself, while his crew testified in his favor, claiming they knew nothing about what Joe was stating. The judge then quietly advised Joe to get on his horse and ride out of the community while he still could. Understanding the threat, Joe didn't hesitate and departed immediately. When Bragg took the stand, he accused Virgil of setting him up and claimed Joe was lying to make him appear guilty. Despite his confident manner and smooth words, the judge was not convinced. In the conclusion, Bragg was found guilty and sentenced to hang in another city. During Bragg's transfer by train, everything went smoothly at first. The guards kept a close observation on him, and Virgil seemed confident that nothing could go incorrect. However, when the train stopped to refill its water supply, difficulty arrived. The Shelton brothers suddenly appeared beneath the tracks, holding Ally captive. They demanded Bragg's release, threatening to eliminate her if Virgil refused. Faced with an impossible choice, Virgil hesitated, torn between his responsibility as a peacekeeper and his feelings for Ally. In the conclusion, he surrendered and commanded Bragg's release to preserve her existence. The brothers promised they would release Ally once the train started moving again, but as soon as they had Bragg, they rode off with both him and Ally, leaving Virgil standing helpless and furious. Humiliated but determined to make things correct, he set off after them on foot, while Everett stayed behind to return to the community by train and bring back horses. After a long and exhausting day, the two peacekeepers reunited and began tracking the fugitives across the harsh landscape. Everett inquired Virgil how he was holding up. Virgil, attempting to stay strong, simply responded that he was fine and reminded Everett that displaying feelings was a good way to get yourself eliminated. The following morning, they spotted the group camped near a river. At the same moment, a band of native warriors began approaching the location, clearly preparing for an attack. Virgil and Everett rushed closer to attempt to reach Ally before violence broke out. To their shock, they discovered her bathing unclothed in the river, laughing and playing with one of the Shelton brothers. The sight cut deep into Virgil's pride, but there was no duration for response as the warriors closed in. Moments later, the attack began. When one of them attempted dragging Ally away, Virgil and Everett opened fire, eliminating one of the attackers' horses and forcing the remainder to retreat. Observing that everyone was still in threat, Virgil struck a temporary truce with the Shelton brothers, consenting to collaborate together until they reached safety. The brothers accepted the arrangement, and Virgil returned their weapons so they could battle if needed. To avoid further conflict with the nearby warriors, Everett offered them Bragg's prized horse as a peace gesture, which calmed the circumstance and permitted the group to move on unharmed. That evening, as they camped by the fire, one of the Shelton brothers informed Virgil they were only assisting Bragg because he owed them currency and that none of it was personal. Virgil cautioned them that Bragg was now his prisoner and that he would handle him once they reached the community. Later, Ally sat between Virgil and Everett, trembling and emotional. She stated she had been terrified and that what occurred with Ring Shelton was a mistake. She apologized, stating she had been lonely and confused. Virgil listened quietly, then turned to Everett and inquired if he thought Ally would betray him again. Everett answered honestly, stating she was the type of woman who always needed someone to depend on. Angered by the comment, Ally suddenly accused Everett of touching her. Virgil stayed calm and refused believing her story, standing by Everett instead of her. They later arrive in a small, quiet community where Virgil and the Shelton brothers prepare for their inevitable confrontation. Before the battle begins, Virgil opens up to Everett, speaking softly but firmly about his feelings for Ally. He admits that despite everything, he genuinely enjoys being around her. He describes her as full of warmth and appeal, a woman who brightens any room she walks into. Yet with a heavy heart, he confesses she is not the type of woman meant for a steady home or a quiet existence. Everett listens carefully and reflects on Ally's nature. He informs Virgil that she isn't truly immoral or heartless, only drawn to strength and control. Her affection seems to drift naturally toward whoever holds authority at the moment. Virgil admits that none of it changes how he feels about her. He still loves her deeply and intends staying by her side. A short while later, Ally appears. She looks frightened and uncertain, her voice trembling as she inquires how the two individuals can walk so calmly toward death. Both Virgil and Everett attempt comforting her, explaining that threat has always been a part of their existences. Ally confesses that her greatest fear is losing everything she possesses. Virgil assures her that as long as she needs him, he will be there to protect her. When the moment comes, Virgil and Everett make their way to the Stockyards. Upon arriving, they discover a cruel betrayal. The community marshal whom they had trusted to keep Bragg under arrest is actually related to the Shelton brothers. It's a trap. Bragg, the brothers, and the marshals surround them, turning what was supposed to be a fair battle into a desperate 4-against-2 attack. They start shooting. Virgil kills one of the brothers and the corrupt marshal, while Everett takes down the other brother. Bragg flees on horseback, disappearing into the distance. When the dust settles, both Virgil and Everett are wounded but alive. Ally runs to Virgil's side, terrified that he might perish in her arms. Duration passes and existence slowly begins rebuilding itself. The residence Virgil once promised Ally is finally completed. His leg never fully heals, leaving him with a permanent limp and a brace that sounds softly when he walks. Yet, despite the pain in the past, a sense of peace begins returning. One evening, Everett inquires the woman he's been seeing if she believes Ally truly loves Virgil. She smiles faintly and informs him that only individuals waste their duration worrying about love. In her view, Ally stays with Virgil because he now holds an official title. If someone better comes along, she states, Ally will not hesitate replacing him. Everett doesn't argue, realizing her words might be truer than he wants believing. Not long after their encounter at the Stockyards, Virgil and Everett received shocking news that Randall Bragg had been granted a presidential pardon. It was something Bragg had often boasted about, though most had dismissed his words as desperate lies. Now, it turned out he had been telling the truth. Soon after, Bragg returned to Appaloosa dressed in fine clothing, conducting himself like an individual reborn. He wore confidence like armor and greeted the townspeople with polite smiles, as if the past could be forgotten. That evening, he entered the drinking establishment where Virgil, Everett, and Ally were having dinner. Bragg approached their table and attempted making peace. Speaking smoothly and pretending to be a changed individual, Virgil met his eyes and refused. He informed Bragg that no pardon could erase what he had done, that he was still a killer and would never get away with it. Bragg's expression tightened, but he stated nothing and walked away. After he departed, Ally inquired Virgil why Bragg had chosen returning to the community, and Virgil responded that pride was the only reason. Virgil went to observe the judge who had handled Bragg's case. The individual informed him there was nothing that could be done. The pardon had already been approved after an unfair trial and a lack of solid evidence. When Virgil returned, he informed Everett what he had learned. Everett listened and stated he never cared much about the authority as a shooter, and if fairness failed, he would take matters into his own hands. Virgil informed him that the authority was the only thing that provided meaning to his control, and without it, his badge would be worthless. In the days that followed, Bragg opened a luxurious lodging. He spoke often of reform and respectability, though most people in the community believed his currency still came from the same crooked dealings. Everett paid him a visit one afternoon. Bragg welcomed him warmly, offered him a beverage, and spoke of starting fresh. He claimed to have moved beyond his old ways and even suggested collaborating together with Everett and Virgil. When Everett remained silent, Bragg informed him that if they refused standing on his side, they might soon find themselves without assignments. It was clear by then that the community officials had fallen under Bragg's influence. Everett realized Virgil's duration as Marshall was drawing to a conclusion. That evening, Everett and Virgil conversed quietly about what was occurring. Everett admitted there was no longer a place for him in Appaloosa, while Virgil confessed he wanted staying because of Ally. Everett voiced his concern that Ally might depart once things changed. Virgil stated he already knew, but still wanted staying with her. Not long after, Everett observed Ally in Bragg's lodging, sitting at the piano and performing softly while Bragg observed her. Later that day, he observed her slipping upstairs to Bragg's room. He felt no anger, only a quiet disappointment. The balance of authority in Appaloosa had shifted, and Ally had shifted with it. When she came down the corridor, she discovered Everett waiting. Their eyes met briefly, but she walked past him without a word. The following day, Everett visited the local prostitute he had been seeing. He brought her a small necklace, a simple gift meant as a farewell. As they sat together, he confessed something that had long burdened his conscience. Years ago, he had eliminated an individual outside the authority, not in responsibility or defense, but out of anger, and the memory had stayed with him ever since. He informed her he was departing the community and did not know if he would ever return. Before riding out, Everett stopped by the lodging. He placed his badge and a weapon on the bar counter and informed the bartender they were for Bragg. Then he went looking for the individual himself. When he discovered Bragg, Everett struck him across the face, challenging him to a fair battle. Bragg froze, uncertain and humiliated, so Everett hit him again, this moment harder, leaving no room for retreat. He informed Bragg that if he refused facing him now, he would come back and eliminate him anyway. Enraged, Bragg grabbed the weapon and stormed outside to meet his challenge. Virgil arrived at the scene and observed Everett standing in the street ready for the duel. He stepped forward attempting stopping it, but Everett looked at him calmly and requested him to step aside. He informed Virgil he had never requested him for anything before and was requesting this one favor now. Understanding his friend's resolve, Virgil stepped back without another word. The standoff concluded almost as soon as it began. Bragg reached for his weapon, but Everett was faster. One shot rang out and Bragg fell deceased in the dust. Everett quietly reloaded his weapon and without a glance behind him, mounted his horse. As he rode out of Appaloosa, Everett thought about what he had done. By eliminating Bragg, he had freed Virgil from a battle that could have cost him his badge and perhaps his existence. He had provided his friend a chance to continue his occupation as a peacekeeper and left room for Virgil and Ally to make peace with one another. The community faded behind him as he rode toward the horizon, searching once again for purpose and a place where he might finally belong.